British boxing has a new potential superstar, and that man's name is Ben Whittaker. I don't remember any fighter of recent being able to generate the amount of headlines and the amount of opinion that Ben Whittaker has in 6 pro fights. So let's speak about Ben Whittaker, and let's speak about whether his showboating style is good, is bad, or something in the middle for British boxing. And here to help me do so is my good friend, Brian, the True Geordie. Brian, what's happening, mate? Thanks for coming back on the channel.
I'm fucking looking forward to this one because this kid is making waves and I love it. Personally, I know it's disrespectful in some people's eyes, and you know the level of opponent that's in front of him, you know, isn't something that he should be that proud of beating. But it isn't about that. It's ironically, it's the same thing I kind of had a word with you before your Misfits debut. Was like, it's not about the opponent at this level. It's about doing the same thing that Conor McGregor did: make noise, and that's exactly what you got to do. It's show business, it's entertainment, and I know people talk about the sweet science and all that. I mean, if people don't realise this is entertainment at this point and not a sport, look at the rankings and look at how often the best guys fight the best guys. It's not about it. Who generates the most money. That's the quickest way you can fast track your career. And you know, as much as, you know, sportsmanship's great, we're not really in there to make friends, are we? We're there to put on a show.
Well, I think when you look at Ben Whittaker, when you look at fighters that have that flamboyant style and they deal with journeymen in the way that they should be dealing with them, and they put on a show at the same time, because we all know if a fighter comes there to survive, you're not going to get a firefight with them. You're probably going to get one man shelling up, one man laying on the ropes, and one man trying to get away from them, and the prospect trying their hardest to look good against an opponent who's really nullifying that and not allowing them to look good through fear of getting stopped. So I think that when you have a fighter like Ben Whittaker and they go in there and they showboat and show the razzle dazzle and the, you know, the arts of how good boxing can look at that level, I think they're showing something very, very different to what other fighters do show on the way up.
Do you not think also, you're now with these lads who shell up and they're just trying to survive, and that's how they make a career, and fair fucks to them, like, no disrespect. Being a journeyman's not easy, and you've got to try and you save yourself for the long run. But if you're showboating and pissing this other lad off, he's actually more likely to try and take your fucking head off and give you a fight.
Yeah.
If you're mocking him, than if you're just putting everything into your punches and pressuring him up against the ropes, for example. So I think it's a strategy it works, and people are saying, can he do it against the better guys? Well, you're more likely to find out now, because people are going to fast track him because everyone's fucking talking about him. And from what I've seen in some sparring clips, given that this lad's a silver medalist, he sparred some high level guys, and he does fight that way against them from what I've seen.
Yeah, so, and also, I mean, you look at his amateur record. He obviously got to an Olympic final, lost in the final, but, you know, was unlucky there. And I think as well, you look at the level of sparring, but the main question is, could he do that on the way up? So if we take away the disrespect element of it, the main thing is, the reason a lot of people are looking at it and maybe looking down their nose at it is they're thinking, okay, yeah, but it's easy to do that against those guys. Can you carry on through the levels and be able to do that? From what you've seen of him so far, do you think he can do that?
I think he will do it, but I don't think it'll be quite the same. I think there's a level of risk-taking early on that you can be so careless, because you know that this guy he's not going to try and take your head off because he's too worried about what's coming back. Maybe if you're in there with an Aziz, you know, you'll show the odd trick, but you're not going to get complacent. He was complacent there. But I still think the flashy style will stay with him forever. And it's going to make him a shitload of money. Like, he's already putting on hundreds of thousands of followers. I know you're not really fussed on Twitter. Ice Cube's son tweeted out, Ice Cube's son's got a name of his own right? Yeah. He's got like 4 million Twitter followers or something like that. And he's like, who is this guy? And that's what you're doing it for. You're doing it so that people who are interested in boxing, who are from America but they're not aware of the UK scene, are going. And like, let's be honest, Boxer, they probably got more attention for Ben Whittaker than they did for the main event. And the main event was as legit as it gets in British boxing. So Ben Whittaker, you did your job, pal. And
he's not just doing his job in the ring. Like I was saying to you off camera, I was having a little look at his highlights last night, and the proof's in the pudding, man. You look at the numbers on those highlights. Boxer isn't generating those sort of numbers
exactly.
on anything, right? But not only that, I've typed in Ben Whittaker highlights, and I thought, why has this popped up? He's released a music video. So Ben Whittaker is a rapper slash singer at the same time.
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Got a bit of auto-tune on it just to make sure it doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah. But I tell you what, mate, like when we're looking at characters, and we're looking at the moment at British boxing, right? We went through an absolute golden era of British boxers and British boxers that you could put up in heavyweight sort of pay-per-view fights, any weight pay-per-view fights, to be honest. And now you're looking at the likes of a David Hayer, Tony Bell, George Groves, Carl Froch. A lot of those guys have now gone, right?
Yeah.
And when we're looking at the crop now, we're sort of looking at it thinking, okay, who are going to be those guys? Now, we got some answers from the Dan Aziz Joshua Buatsi fight the other night, because Joshua Buatsi is the real deal, and we do look at him thinking that he could potentially go on and challenge at the top of the light heavyweight division. But it's very scarce in that pool of fighters that we're looking at and thinking you could be a pay-per-view star at the minute in comparison to maybe how it was 10 years ago. And I look at Ben Whittaker, I look at the showmanship, I look at the confidence, I look at, even the fact of releasing that music video, that takes some guts, When you've got people gunning for you and people getting at you in the comment section, to be able to say, yeah, I've got this flamboyant style in the ring, but I've also got it outside of that as well. This kid has every attribute, if he can continue his quality at the top level, which the Olympic silver medal would suggest he can be a massive, massive pay-per-view star in the UK, can't he?
And I wouldn't be surprised if some guys start taking notes, because let's be real, it's proven that it works. And we can go right the way back to Prince Nassim Hamed. My introduction to boxing was seeing Naz on the news and stuff like that when I was like a baby, right? Just being like, wow, this is like a ninja. I didn't understand boxing at the time, right? And I had to know, who is this guy? And he captures the imagination. And, you're right. I am sort of wondering, like, who is the next pay-per-view star? Because as good as Buatsi is, and I really rate him, the personality isn't going to draw in the pay-per-view numbers. It's the in-ring performance. And, you've got some massive people in your way to win a world title in that weight class. So I think that maybe Vidal Riley, I would put him in there as a future potential pay-per-view guy as well, because just like him, got a bit of a style about him, exciting, bit of a showboater. Bigger YouTube guy, does music videos. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that this new crop are kind of going, all right, we're going to do a music video, we're going to get a YouTube channel up, we're going to do, like, this should be the model. Every one of them should start doing this. And how far does he go though? What do you think?
Look, there's a lot of guys in the domestic mix at the minute that you think that is an absolutely phenomenal fight to see Ben Whittaker in there with a Callum Johnson, maybe with a Callum Smith. I know he's just took a loss, with a Buatsi, or even with a Dan Aziz. I think that's a really sensible fight.
Aziz would be exciting.
That'd be a really, really exciting fight, and we would see him tested, and we would see a lot more from Ben Whittaker. And remember as well, not only would the amount of showboating he's able to do probably reduce as he goes up in the levels, but also the competitiveness in his actual boxing and the showcasing of his actual boxing ability will increase as he goes up in the levels. So I think there's so many domestic fights that I'd love to see him at, but at the age of 26, 27, I don't know how fast they'll move him, and I don't know how quickly he'll go to the top for us to be able to see him in those sort of dust-ups.
Well, there's a little bit of talk about his contract with Boxer, because obviously I think Boxer isn't going the way we kind of hoped it would. It's not that... look, you watch a Boxer card, you can pick the winners before they've even... so they're lacking a bit of that uncertainty and the depth of their cards, despite the main event actually being a really good main event last time out. But if I'm Boxer, I throw him in there with a bigger name as quick as I can, because they need big fights desperately. But apparently there was a rumour that there's not that many fights left on his contract, and you already know Queensberry and Matchroom will be fighting over him, surely. Mate,
you just said Queensberry and Matchroom. That's just limiting it to the UK-based promoters.
Exactly, yeah.
The Americans will love this kid.
Yeah.
We saw Prince Nazim go over to America, and I think we could see a very, very similar path trod by Ben Whittaker.
PBC maybe. Right?
PBC maybe. There's a lot of guys that in America would love to see Ben Whittaker over on them shores, and I think sooner rather than later that happens. I think that...
He's mentioned doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
I heard somewhere him say something along the lines of, I want to get a global following. I don't want to just limit myself to the UK, which
Well, I think he's well on his way to getting there. How quickly we see him move, I'm really not sure. We saw guys come out of the Olympics before and they'll move very quickly, you know. Josh Kelly was put in there with quite high-level opposition quite early on when he had come out of the Olympic cycle. I mean, Joe Joyce started fighting, I think he fought for a Commonwealth title in maybe his 5th fight or something like that.
AJ was fucking fast-tracked the hell.
Fast-tracked really quickly. So I think that Ben Whittaker's age and the division he's in might go against that. Yeah. At the moment, it's just way too early for us to even talk about a Ben Whittaker against a Bivol and against a Beterbiev. And when you look at Beterbiev's age, probably never going to get there by the time. I think those two ships won't cross. However, there are guys like Buatsi, there are guys like Dan Aziz that I think, even Anthony Yard, that's a really, really intriguing one, you know. I think we could see him in there with those sort of guys, maybe towards the back end of next year. And I think that in the meantime, this is the key thing, right? Callum Smith coming up. Callum Smith was very, very lucky almost to be able to box on the undercards of Anthony Joshua, Carl Froch, George Groves, those sort of fighters when he was making his path to the top of the division. Yeah. And what that meant was the limelight was on him a lot more than it would have been if he was in a different era. But what Callum Smith didn't do, apart from looking explosive in his punching and very, very good, what he didn't do is draw the sort of eyeballs from outside of the hardcore boxing community. Ben Whittaker's doing that. And what that does mean is if Ben Whittaker stays along this footpath that he's going right now, once he gets to those fights, there's going to maybe be a couple of O's added on to the end of these paychecks that he's seeing in comparison to what he would have been seeing had he not had this style. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is, from a boxing fan, from someone who loves their boxing and respects boxing massively, I don't really see any problem with it, you know. I don't see any problem.
Judging by your last performance, I wouldn't have thought so.
No.
You love a showboat, right? And I think when people say, oh, it's disrespectful, it's in bad, and a lot of people were, by the way. A lot of people were pissed off. If I was saying to Ben Whittaker now, if I was in his ear, just from a social media point of view, I'd go, mate, the bigger you get, the more people are going to dislike you. That is the internet. And you can guarantee in the likes of Conor McGregor or any of these people, and these are people that, you know, I've said my own pieces about them, but just from a neutral point of view, half of your followers are going to dislike you at one point. You can't get as big as you need to get to make the biggest money without that being the case. You want at least 50% of them kind of hoping you get sparked out. And the more you do that, the more people are going to want to know, is this the night he gets his fucking comeuppance? Embrace it. Not necessarily be the bad guy, be yourself. But if that's what people are going to have a laugh about it. I remember Prince Nassim Hamed doing a fucking half an hour ring walk in New York or whatever it is, and just stole the fucking show when he's doing his, I think it was Men in Black was playing the Will Smith song. And mate, own it. If anything, if Boxer do have him on a longer contract that I'm aware of or whatever, you need to ramp up your entrances, ramp up the razzmatazz, the showmanship. I want him wearing sunglasses and gleaming on the way to the fucking ring, wearing fucking diamonds. Go full blown like rapper type attitude, right? Love yourself. If you want, Kanye West to the max, and just embrace this, because that is going to make you make so much more money than if you blend in. Because I take for example my man Lawrence Oswecki, who we've had on the Pain Game. He was Team GB, ranked the best light heavyweight in Britain, and he did it in super quick time. But Lawrence is a really humble guy, and he always says to me now, like, too humble even. I wish I'd been a bit more, let it go more. And for young lads out there, you need to embrace that, and just a bit, and even if it isn't you as much, you need to turn the volume up. Now it is him. So turn the volume up even more. Do you know what I mean?
And when you trust the process and you believe you're going to get to where you think you'll get to, then it's just about, as I say, trusting that process and knowing that when I do get there, if I am bothered about this, opinions will change, you know. Opinions will change. Listen,
they love. People love it when they're like, oh, he's actually not that bad. You know, like, what they do is you be the cocky bastard, and then you release a clip of him fucking doing some charity work with some kids. And people like, oh, actually, he's all right, isn't he?
Mate, do you know what it was?
It's so easy.
I remember on the come up of Tyson Fury, he was Marmite, man. And in fact, more people probably disliked him than did like him with the things he would say and things like that. When he went and beat Klitschko, all of a sudden, it flipped. Flavour of the month, everyone loving him. And I think that if you're Ben Whittaker, you're looking at it and you're going, okay, I can do all of this on the way up. I can generate more interest, generate more eyeballs, get a bit more money as I go. And then when I go in there and beat a guy at the top of the division, that's when everyone goes fair play. Because you know what? Some people would look at it and say there's nothing wrong with borrowing money if you're going to repay your debts. There's nothing wrong with doing what you're doing right now if you're going to step up, take the best fights when they're available to you, and actually continue to showcase that flamboyant style in those big fights. And that's something that Prince Naseem did do. And obviously, I think that when we're looking at Ben Whittaker now, we're going to see another guy treading that same sort of footpath. So all I can really say is I'm very, very excited to see his journey from this point onwards.
1,000,000%, bro. Completely.
People, let me know in the comment section what you think of Ben Whittaker. Do you think it's classless? Do you think it's classy? Or are you not really bothered about it? As long as we see him in with some of the big guys sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for joining me in another video. The Pain Game is linked in the description. That is Brian's channel that I'm a regular guest on. So make sure you head over there and subscribe to that, and I will see you all in the next one.